Hello there and welcome, my lovely humans, to this little training that we have on the menstrual cycle. So yes, I'm assuming ladies are going to be the one that are tuning into this one. But guys, if you are listening to this and you've just clicked on the first few seconds to listen in, do not click away. This is going to be some powerful information because let's face it, dudes, between me and you, moving close, because whether you like it or not, the lady in your life is going to go through this particular issue. You are going to have to deal with the rise and fall of hormones and what that means in terms of your quality of life, and whether you have to have your head sewn back on your shoulders because it's been beheaded for something that you said that was incorrect, or maybe slightly inflammatory to your lovely better half who's going through a bit of an emotional roller coaster in terms of the menstrual cycle. Now, ladies, of course, you know what it's all about. You know that this is not an easy thing to have to deal with every single month. It causes mood swings, it causes hunger to go up and down, cravings to go through the roof. You maybe want to snack on chocolate all day long, and that's even before we got to the stomach cramps and all of those difficulties that go on with it. Because let's face it, the dudes got off lightly with this one. We don't have any of this stuff to deal with, and we're kind of blissfully ignorant as to the real extent of what it is and what it means to go through the menstrual cycle on a monthly basis. So what we're going to be doing on this particular episode, this particular edition, is going through what the menstrual cycle means in terms of weight and fat loss. Because I imagine a lot of the ladies tuning into this are trying to lose some weight. They're trying to lose some body fat, get in shape, maybe build some muscle, tone, whatever you want to call it, and they're struggling to break through certain parts of the month where things are particularly challenging. They're coming up to the same roadblock month on month on month, can't get through that roadblock. The cravings have proved to be too much. They crack, they falter, they stumble, and they feel like they're a failure. So if that is you, then I don't want you to feel that way. There's no real need for you to feel a failure. And if you've got some good nutritional knowledge and an understanding of why things are happening, then that can be super, super valuable to you and help you understand more about your body and how your body is going through different changes throughout the month and what it actually means and what actually is going on. That's going to be crucial information that I'm going to give to you over the course of the next 10 to 15 minutes or so. So let's get cracking. Now, the menstrual cycle is broken up into a number of different phases. It lasts for, on average, 28 days. Obviously, there's some variation from person to person, and that is one theme that we'll keep coming back to, is that this is very, very individual. One female is not necessarily exactly the same as their friend or the next person or the next person. This is a very individual thing. So the research that has gone on in this area can only provide us with some general guidelines. What you're going to have to do is take this information, apply it to your own situation, see what works, see what's true, see what's not quite working for you, and how you need to adapt and change. So don't take everything as absolute gospel, set in stone, every single word, it must be like this. It's just the start point to enable you to make some logical decisions based on your own situation. That's the first thing I would say. So we can break the menstrual cycle down into 4 different phases. You've got the follicular phase, which is the start of menstruation, which is about 1 to 4 days long. Then you've got what you would call sort of like late follicular, that's 5 to 11 days in. Then you've got your peri-ovulation, so that's like around the ovulation period, so that's 12 to 15 days in. And then at 16 to 28 days, you've got your luteal phase. So posh terms, but basically it's kind of, that's how things map out. And through different stages of your menstrual cycle, then hormones start to change. And this is where you're going to get some hunger issues, cravings, water weight fluctuations. All of these different sorts of things are going to start to happen at different stages of your menstrual cycle. Now, you'll find that generally speaking, in the luteal phase, which is that sort of post-ovulation period, is energy intake is going to go up So basically, you're going to eat more or want to eat more if you can't control it. And your energy expenditure is also going to go up as well. So a slight increase in your basal metabolic rate. So that's interesting to know that your basal metabolic rate is going to fluctuate over the course of a 28-day period. Now, in reality, the menstrual cycle does make fat loss more complicated for females than it does for men. And if you look at any sort of weight loss charts, maybe like one from my client, then you could see that a female losing weight, you see a lot more fluctuations in water weight than you would for a male. So a male is very much, let's assume that they're doing everything perfectly correctly. There's no wild week-long binges or anything like that. They're doing pretty much everything as you would expect. That's more of a straight line down. It's going to have some fluctuation. There's going to be some ups, some downs. Of course, there are water weight fluctuations are common for everybody, but it's going to be more of a straight line down than it would be for a female. A female is generally going to get sort of almost waves. And this is going to be related to the water weight fluctuations that are related to hormones and all these different sorts of things, and how you deal with hunger and how much it affects you and how that affects your energy balance. What you generally see in females is much more sort of waves where it will go up and then big drops down, and then all these sort of waves that go through a 2, 3, 4, 5 month period or however long it is you're dieting. Ultimately, though, the goal ends up the same. You still will lose body fat and things like that. You still will improve, but it just makes the process a little bit more tricky. And it would be one of the reasons why I wouldn't want females to go out and really kind of focus really heavily on the scales. That's going to be one of the biggest things that I want you to take away from this, is that weight loss really is just going to be a very, very difficult thing to measure, particularly day to day, especially week to week, and then also like month to month. So really where you want to be is, when you're stepping on the scales every single day, if that's what you're doing, you've got to expect some changes. But once you know where those changes are going to happen, you can anticipate it. You don't then jump on the scales and then see your weight spike by half a kilo and then want to go stab somebody in the eye because you did everything right, but your weight went up and now someone's life is in danger, mainly your husband or your partner, because it's clearly their fault. It's always a man's fault, regardless of what happens. Anyway, so what happens across all of these different phases, all of these different 4 sections of the menstrual cycle? What actually is going on? Well, you've got two hormones really at play. There's lots of others, but 2 that are really going to be worthwhile focusing in on for this particular topic of weight and fat loss. You've got estrogen and you've got progesterone. Okay, cool. Now, just before ovulation, your estrogen levels will go up. They're going to slightly rise prior to that, but you're going to get this peak at the point of pre-ovulation. Then once ovulation has happened, what you're going to have then is a decrease in estrogen, and then you're going to have a rise in progesterone throughout the luteal phase. So partway through the luteal phase, that's where it'll peak, and then it will drop off before the whole cycle starts again. So that's kind of what's going on. When progesterone starts to increase during that luteal phase, that's where you're going to see a potential increase in body temperature, which is going to be driving an increase in your basal metabolic rate. So you're naturally going to be burning more calories in that luteal phase. And before we carry on, I'll root you back right to the beginning and say, don't forget that there is a lot of individual variance here. So you might say, well, Simon, I don't get that sort of body temperature increase until this part of my menstrual cycle. Cool. Don't forget, everybody's individual. Take what I'm saying and understand almost what's happening. So if your body temperature increase is potentially a different part, then maybe you've got some slight variations in when your hormones are rising and falling. So just understand like the background and then apply it to your situation. Now, that increase in progesterone, the decrease in estrogen, this is where things start to generally go a little bit awry. Gents, if you've made it this far through the training, this is the part that you need to understand, because this is where shit might get dangerous. This is where it kicks off. So generally now hunger is going to increase after ovulation. Now, at that point, some researchers believe that that's to do with the rising progesterone. Some researchers say it's to do with the decrease in the fall in estrogen, but there also could be an argument to say, well, it's a mixture of the two and how these hormones interact with each other. Really, it kind of hints that maybe the exact reason isn't quite known. No one's been able to pin it on this, that, or the other, but just know that that's what's going on, in the sense that you've got this fall in your estrogen levels, you've got this rise in your progesterone levels, and the mix of what's going on in that part of the process is potentially going to cause your hunger levels to increase. That's what you want to understand, is that luteal phase, as I mentioned right early on, is that energy intake is potentially going to increase. So if you were someone who wasn't tracking calories, who wasn't focused on how much they were eating, you would naturally probably eat more because your energy expenditure has gone up, your hunger levels have gone up, you want to eat more, so you do eat more. That's kind of what's happening in that post-ovulation phase. Now, again, if you look at the research and to say, well, what does that actually mean? So what does it mean in terms of, well, my energy expenditure goes up? What are we talking about in terms of calories? Because that's maybe what you want to understand. Now, obviously, again, it's all individual. No one can give you an exact answer. So it feels a bit of a cop-out, but I guess like the Insta guru who says, I know about your menstrual cycle, I know exactly what it's going to be 111 calories, or it's going to be 323 calories for every single person, is just talking out their ass, because no one really knows. So what I would say is, if you look at some of the research, and if you look at Lyle McDonald's stuff on this, then that is a very, very good resource for you to go to. He's got a book that's specifically about female fat loss and things like that. So really, that's going to be a great source for anybody to go to. Now, really, in terms of caloric expenditure, it's going to be, roughly speaking, anywhere between 90 and 280 calories per day. That's the increase you're going to get. So an increase of 90 calories is barely noticeable, barely noticeable. Now, that might be the equivalent of a medium apple, to put it into context for you. 280 calories might be a Kit Kat and an apple is like 280 calories. I know that because an apple is about 82 calories and a Kit Kat's about 209. So that's just slightly over the 280 calories. But to put it in context for you, so you're going to be burning anywhere between an apple and a Kit Kat and an apple. There you go. I'm giving you practical advice here. You don't get this from any other nutrition dude. Now, in terms of your energy intake, so that's the equivalent of what your body's burning. Now, if you're not managing calories, your natural energy intake increase is anywhere between 90 to 500 calories. That's what people who are not monitoring things would do if they were just given free rein to say, well, eat what you want and how do you feel based on hunger and things like that, what food options they pick. That's what's happening. So potentially you could have this huge disconnect between, well, my BMR has increased by X amount, let's say 100 calories, but I've eaten 400 more. And therefore, that's going to potentially cause you either to, depending on what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to lose weight, then, or lose body fat, should we say, to be more specific, is that you could come out of a calorie deficit at that point. So it's just to understand that naturally, if you would tend to maybe potentially eat slightly more than that increase is worth. So just bearing that in mind, to understand that, again, you're going to go through these phases where in the luteal phase, post-ovulation, you're going to have these hormone changes, these hormone balance changes that are going to cause your body temperature to go up. They're going to cause your hunger levels to go up. And that's going to impact how you naturally start to eat and how you crave different types of foods and so on. So it's just worth knowing that. So now when you start to plan for these things, you can kind of plan around it. The other thing to talk about is estrogen. So estrogen, we talked about that rising sort of in the late follicular phase and then sort of coming to a peak just pre-ovulation. Now that does play a role in weight and fat loss. And this is like quite complicated. So sometimes it's seen as a real negative for weight and fat loss. But then if you look at some other research, it's seen as a much more of a positive. That's a fucking mindfuck, isn't it? Because you can't really get a straight answer out of anybody these fucking days, and nutrition is notorious for it. But hey, sometimes the gray middle area is the right answer, and sometimes being like hugely one way or the other is the wrong answer. So it could make you potentially eat less. So you've got this phase where post-ovulation, you've got hunger levels going up, could actually mean before that happens, your hunger levels go down in the when those estrogen levels rise, which could be a good thing. And then also there is some indication that increases in estrogen help you to mobilize fat. And therefore, if you're in a calorie deficit, it may be easier for you then to burn fat in that particular phase of your menstrual cycle. That is entirely possible. So all of that considered, there's a lot going on. I think that's the one thing that you can kind of come out from this, is that there is a lot going on. And it could be that, you've got this hunger levels, you've got rising BMI, you've got estrogen going on. Don't forget as well, when hormones just go up as well, you're probably going to get some water retention. So even if you can get some weight and fat loss, it could be masked by water retention. And that's a key thing that you need to understand, is that rises in water weight could hugely mask progress that you're genuinely actually making. So that's an important thing to understand. Now, the other thing to consider is that in certain periods of your menstrual cycle, some females suffer with a low blood sugar. So that can, again, affect hunger. It can affect various different things. Now, you can slightly combat that maybe by having slightly more fruit into your diet to give yourself that blood sugar balance that you're trying to achieve. So again, if you have that sort of low blood pressure feeling, then blood sugar, not blood pressure, low blood sugar feeling, then you can combat that by having a slightly more fruit into your diet. So that's kind of where we're at with this whole thing. And coming back to the beginning, it's hugely individualistic. It's hugely nuanced from individual to individual. And that goes even further when you start to talk about birth control and the impacts of birth control on each individual person. Now, this can vary depending on the type of birth control that you're having, and also how that type of birth control influences a particular individual, because that can be nuanced by type and by person. So again, there's not like really one huge thing you could say, bang, this is the answer. Again, you're going to have to listen to your body, understand what's going on, and then start to plan for it. But any sort of weight gain that may be associated with a contraceptive pill or anything like that is going to be really associated to impacts on hunger levels, really. Obviously the pill itself doesn't actually increase weight. It's how that makes you feel, and therefore you maybe potentially eat more. So there's that to go on. Now, what I want to do is kind of really bring it back to some practical advice that you can take away and start to implement. So the first thing is that understanding your own cycle. So looking at, I would say, at least 2 months to say what is happening. Make notes about, how do I feel? What's my hunger levels like at each stage of this process? Do I feel more hungry? Do I feel more tired? Do I feel like my body temperature is increasing? Okay, if it does, how long for? And then start to understand that. Then overlay on top of that, have a look at how your weight is changing. So understand, is your weight going up at certain times, down at certain times? Is that the same month to month? And again, start to map that out. If you can do this before you start a weight loss process, then that would be hugely advantageous, because if you're eating at, say, maintenance level calories, you're not trying to lose weight or gain weight or anything like that. You're keeping everything fairly even. And then the variables you are seeing are related to that menstrual cycle. So it helps you understand. Obviously, you can go ahead and lose weight and go into a calorie deficit. That's perfectly fine. But if you kind of have the luxury of maybe observing for a couple of months before you then go into a weight loss phase, it could help you stick to that plan, stick to that program, understand more about your body, understand more about what might be happening, and then start to adjust what you want to do from there. Now, when your BMR goes up, now there's two ways you can look at this. Your BMR goes up through this increase in energy expenditure, body temperature goes up during the luteal phase. Now, your hunger is going to go up. But if you can maintain your caloric intake, let's say you're in a deficit, through that period, theoretically, your energy expenditure is then going to increasing your calorie deficit, helping you to lose more weight more quickly, or more fat more quickly, which is only going to be a good thing. But you're going to have to combat that against hunger. And these are the sorts of trade-offs that you're going to have to think about. Are you happy to tough it out through potentially the period where you're most hungry in order to get a little bit bigger of a calorie deficit and make it a bit more progress? Possibly. It might be that those hunger levels are too great for you, and it makes sense for you to actually increase your calorie intake there so that you can combat your cravings and not go sort of off on wild binges and things like that. And then potentially when you come back to more of a normal levels of hormones, then you say, well, okay, I'm going to increase my deficit here because I know I'm not going to be so hungry. And that therefore balances out your caloric intake across that 28-day period. So it's really about understanding, again, like how things operate in your body for you. Is it a case that you want to adjust your calories? So do you want to have lower calories pre-ovulation and you want to have higher calories post-ovulation, and then they average out across the 28-day period? Do you want to hit it 28 days all at the same level? It's again going to be up to you. It's going to be hugely nuanced, and you've got to kind of really adjust to suit you. The other thing that I wanted to hint on before we wrap this one up is chocolate, because I'm a single dude. Let's kind of get that out there in the open. I'm a single dude. So right now, I don't necessarily have day-to-day experience of this whole thing, but I am pushing 38, so I have had experience of it in the past. And ladies, I do know that chocolate is a little bit of a thing for a lot of ladies when it comes to the menstrual cycle. So there's a lot of indication. I wouldn't say like strong research or anything like that, but some indication that chocolate craving might be related to magnesium and your need for more magnesium in your diet. And that's what the body's craving. Therefore, chocolate's got a little bit of magnesium in it. Plus, there's a thought that there is a more craving for carbs and fat. So chocolate may have this sort of carb, fat, magnesium trifecta of greatness that gives your body what it wants in terms of those various different things. So it could be related to that. So having a small amount of chocolate on a regular basis throughout the period, especially when you're at your most hungry, could be a good way for you to prevent huge levels of hunger. It could be preventing huge cravings, could be preventing binge eating. It could be preventing you going way over your target caloric intake. So again, it's something to consider. May all be something to consider in terms of magnesium supplementation. It could be. Again, you've got to find what works for you. I would say is that make sure you're taking your omega-3, your fish oils, if you've not got oily fish in your diet. Make sure you're taking your vitamin D. All these sort of basic things that we've talked about on previous episodes before, they're always going to be beneficial to have in your diet at all times. So that's where we come to wrap this whole thing up. It is going to be a case of your menstrual cycle is unique to you. Understand what effect it has on your body, what effect it has on your water weight fluctuations, what effect it has on your hunger levels, and then understand what the underlying causes of that, i.e. it's this rise in estrogen prior to ovulation, it's these drop in estrogen post-ovulation and the rise in the progesterone in the luteal phase, that luteal phase causing you a potential BMR increase through increased body temperature and so on. Obviously, that's increasing your hunger, potentially causing you to crave more, overeat more, and giving you the need to balance your calories across that 28-day period. Don't be frightened to have more calories in certain phases if that helps your overall adherence. But ultimately, it comes back to understanding what works for you and then applying that in the real world. And what I would always say is when it comes to weighing yourself on the scale, there is so much going on inside your body that a day-to-day variation in scale weight just means nothing. Absolutely nothing. It means fuck all, to pardon my French. So think about looking at things at least on a weekly average. And then once you understand the impact of your own menstrual cycle on your body and on your water weight, look at that same week in the prior month. And all you're looking at is, did the average weight go down between those two phases? So let's say you were looking at the first the 5 to 11 day period that I mentioned, that second phase. If you looked at the same 5 to 11 day period in the prior month and averaged the weight for both, you should see a reduction. You might then see an increase in days 12 to 15 in that 1 month, but you should look at days 12 to 15 in the prior month as well. And was there a drop there? That's the difference that you want to see, because you are unlikely to be able to really see consistent week after week, day after day weight loss reduction because of all of the hormone variations and all the fluctuations that are going on inside your body. So understand that. And hopefully that gives you a bit of solace and a bit of understanding that you are not necessarily doing things wrong when your scale weight goes up. So hopefully you found this training useful. If you did, head over to Instagram. Let me know. That's where I hang out. Drop me a message at iron_paradise_fitness. I know who I am. I know what my username is on Instagram. Don't let that slip up fool you. And also, if you want to talk to me about potentially being a client of mine, maybe this training has said, wow, I could really work with this guy. He's got some awesome information. What is he like to actually be coached by? Well, the answer is I'm freaking amazing. And if you click the link in the comment section, in the notes section of this particular training, you can be whisked away to my online coaching page, which will tell you all about the online coaching that I offer, which I think is pretty unique, pretty special. And you can see all of the testimonials from females, males that have gone through my program and achieved amazing results. And if you want to come and talk to me, we can have a transformation call. It's free, 45 minutes talking to me about your nutrition, talking to me about your training, and then basically me understanding where you're at right now, where you want to get to, and how online coaching with Iron Paradise Fitness with me can help you bridge the gap between A and B. But until then, all I'm going to say right now is keep living the lean life, and I'll see you for the next one.